Okay, so it's day 303, and every day I'm more amazed when I say the numbers. I'm like, again, I started at day 85 with the videos, and I was tracking beforehand because I was writing an ebook about Zelensky. And then day 85, I started 185. I was like, wow, I've been doing this 100 days. 285, 303. It's absolutely amazing. But some absolutely amazing things have happened. And if you're tracking with me, you'll see this. So here's the first article that I want to go through. In light of what's been going on with all the political stuff, Zelensky's speeches, you almost forget that they're still in a hot war, right? So this was 2 days ago. The Ukrainian military repelled attacks in 16 locations in eastern Donetsk and Luhansk, Zaporizhia region. Russian forces struck a hospital. During the past 24 hours, air forces conducted 14 strikes. And then yesterday, so that was yesterday. This is today. Over the past day on Thursday, December 22nd, the armed forces repelled 19 attacks in 19 settlements, and all these artillery hit 18 enemy targets, and they go on, right? So it's still going on. And you almost lose sight of it in front of the bigger picture of the political stuff with all that drama. Heavy fighting in the east as Russians demolished famed Mariupol theater. If you've been watching this as long as I have, you remember this, seeing this theater. It was kind of, people were taking shelter. They wrote children out in large letters out in front of it so that the Russians would not bomb it, right? So here they were talking about all the things that were under attack, and then they got down to this bit about the theater. The theater, a historical monument at which at the start of the Russian invasion had been converted into a bomb shelter for about 600 people, including many children, was repeatedly targeted by Russian airstrikes, despite being clearly marked as a refuge for civilians. The demolition is a clear attempt to hide forever the physical evidence of the largest simultaneous deliberate killing of Ukrainians by the Russians since the beginning of this phase of the war. Now, this is one of the big reasons why I have a hard time with people who say, "Oh, this isn't our problem," or this is attacking civilians. It's an attack on the rule of law itself to be doing this. It's a wanton violation of the rules of war. And so, yeah, you know who the good guys and the bad guys are by things like that. Okay, Patriot missile system. So Biden 2 days ago promised this Patriot missile systems, this 1 point something billion package, including Patriot systems. What will Patriot systems do? And this article sums it up pretty nicely. The weapon was the strongest element of the $1.8 billion tranche that would stop attacks in this country's critical infrastructure. Okay, the Patriot was redesigned to target incoming enemy missiles. Today, the latest iterations of the anti-missile system can track incoming targets from up to 100 kilometers away and destroy them within 40 kilometers of the launcher. That's pretty impressive. And it includes an entire battery. There are trucks that go with it, a radar and control station, a power plant truck. Around 90 people are required to operate the battery, but once it's set up, it can run on with 3 people. So that's pretty awesome. With some experts say that the real world impact of the Patriot system will be limited due to its relatively small protective dome, which it provides at a high cost of around $4 million per missile. Iranian-made suicide drones that Russia has launched in Ukrainian cities are estimated to cost as little as $20,000 to $50,000 each. So you're like spending $1 million to knock down a $20,000 drone, and you think, well, that's not really cost effective. But it depends on what that drone is going to hit. If it's going to hit a power generation system, that might be a cost-effective use of that missile. My son is both of my sons have been in Civil Air Patrol, have been taught how to operate small drones, and my younger son and I were talking yesterday about like the controlling mechanism. Like if you've got to be able to get onto the same frequency to control the drone, or you have to knock it down with a missile. I mean, those are your two choices. So that's what's going on with the Patriots. It's unknown whether the Patriot battery will be deployed in Ukraine or when it will be deployed in Ukraine. They have to be trained in Germany first, and that usually takes months. So it'll take a while for this to get online. But once it is, it'll provide some effective air cover. At least for the capital, and then we'll see how that works from there. Okay, I really had tears in my eyes. Ukrainians react to Zelensky's historic visit to Washington, D.C. I understand. If you're Ukrainian, this must have been a very touching moment for you. It was touching for me. I'm not Ukrainian. I don't have any claim to anything Ukrainian. I'm just an American who cares about American values and am watching what's going on here and saying, wait, they're championing these democratic values and the freedom of their country to make their sovereign choices, and they're being trampled by this dictator over here who, or this, you know, I described it to my daughter yesterday as what we're trying to do is we're trying to prevent Putin from becoming Hitler. And now I understand if you're saying, well, he already is. No, I mean in scale. So if you can stop him here, he doesn't grow. Like you don't feed the beast or it grows. And that's what we need to be doing. But I understand. I mean, if they're having tears in their eyes, I felt very moved by Zelensky's speech as well. Russia responds to Zelensky's visit by accusing the U.S. of a proxy war in Ukraine, and this was yesterday as well. So it was hard to. I was trying to really narrowly focus yesterday, so I'm still showing some other stuff here. And yeah, it is to some degree. You can understand how they would see it as a proxy war because they're supplying. There's not boots on the ground, soldiers fighting against Russia, but if they want to take up arms to defend themselves, we want to supply that. Kremlin warns of a long war after Biden offers more support on Zelensky's visit to the U.S. So this was really interesting. And again, it's the analogy is like the bullies complaining that somebody's hitting back or somebody's helping the victim hit back. Kyiv and his Western allies are set for a long confrontation with Russia following President Volodymyr Zelensky's momentous visit to Washington. Maria Zakharova said that no matter how much military support the West provides to the Ukrainian government, they will achieve nothing. Okay, well, if you think that they'll achieve nothing, why are you so worried about it? I think that's the real question to ask. And then a little bit further, you see the same thing with Peskov. This leads to the fact that, unfortunately, the suffering of the Ukrainian people will continue longer than it could have. Wait a minute. So you're thinking suffering is going to last longer because you're not just getting the snatch and grab and get to go on your way. It's like a criminal arguing, like, if that homeowner didn't put up a fight, I wouldn't have had to bloody my knuckles in the process. I mean, okay. So it's a little ridiculous when you see those kind of claims. The U.S. Senate passed a $1.7 trillion budget in 2023 with almost $45 billion for Ukraine. In a short yesterday, I talked about this and I said it was don't take how the voting goes as an indication of anti-Ukraine sentiment so much as, hey, you're spending way too much and you're not even spending on our priorities and you're spending for this other stuff that we don't want to vote for because it all got stuck in the omnibus bill. So the vote was 68 by 29. That's a crazy margin. It was in no danger or jeopardy any way you cut it. But don't take that as an indication. So I'm watching a very conservative a senator this morning on the news talking about it, and it wasn't so much anti-Ukraine as it was, wait, we're not even securing our borders, which for the Republicans is a big issue. For the Democrats, it's not. And so like their priorities aren't being met. So why are we even spending this other stuff anywhere else? And with Ukraine, she mentioned other places like, the Middle East and other things along those lines. So it wasn't like anti-Ukraine so much as why are we spending over here? So I wouldn't take that as a sentiment that, there's a big narrative, and particularly on the left, the narrative is, oh, those Republicans over there, they aren't, for Ukraine. Don't push them away, right? Take all that you can. Folks like me, take all that you can and have as much unity as you can. Don't divide, try to unify about Ukraine. Okay, U.S. says Putin's call to end war in Ukraine is insincere. Our goal is not to spin the flywheel of military conflict, he says. Really? Our goal is not to spin the flywheel of military conflict. On the contrary, to end this war. Okay, so he wants to end it, but he wants to end it on terms that aren't acceptable. Quite to the contrary, Kirby told reporters during an online briefing, everything Putin, is doing on the ground and in the air bespeak a man who wants to continue to visit violence upon the Ukrainian people and escalate the war. So he can talk about it, he can lie about we want to negotiate all day long, but we'll judge you by your actions. In the absence of that, we have to see some meaningful evidence that Russia is prepared to actually negotiate a just, durable peace. By just, That's one that doesn't simply ratify another country seizing by force the territory of another, and by durable in the sense that we want to make sure that it holds and that we're not simply putting Ukraine in a position where Russia is going to repeat what it did a month 6 years later. Okay. Yes, that's right. And Blinken is absolutely right to be looking for both a just and a durable peace. Okay, one last article before we go to fun with Russian propaganda. So North Korea is denying that they're supplying the Wagner Group with their missiles, but again, North Korea lies. So does so do the Soviets. So do the Iranians. They all lie. So why would you believe their statements if they lie? So that's what we need to sort out. Okay, now we'll turn our attention to fun with Russian state media. In our first article, we're going to start right at the top, the president of Russia's website. I mean, it is Russian state media, right? So let's look at this. He had a number of journalists coming to ask him questions. And so here, clearly, the journalists asked, clearly, it was not the easiest year and not the most ordinary, but what are its main results for you? We've achieved perhaps what have we achieved? Perhaps what did we fail to achieve? And how do you see our future when we're going and where we should arrive? Now, if you're Putin, you're locked into a very terrible place because he's a dictator who hasn't told the truth. He can't start telling the truth now and say, you know what, it does kind of suck. This is terrible. And we really shouldn't have gotten into this war. We bit off more than we can chew and we didn't realize they'd fight back. He can't say that, even if he wanted to, even if he believed it. And I don't know that he does, but even if he did, he couldn't do anything about that. Okay, so Putin's response: there are no ideal situations. Ideal situations only happen in plans on paper, and you always want something more. Okay, that's a pretty fair, accurate statement, and somewhat telling. You always want something more. But in general, I think that Russia made it through the year quite confidently. Really? Like, you think that's a good year for Russia? You've been pantsed in front of the entire world, where everyone thought your army was the second baddest in the world, and now it turns out it's one of the baddest. So let me repeat once again. And I don't mean baddest in the good sense of the term either. Let me repeat once again. We believe, I stress this, that everything is happening and everything is connected with a special military operation is an absolutely forced and necessary measure. It's all going according to plan. Well, it's not all going according to plan, but he can't say otherwise. That's the misery. Like, I would hate to be a dictator. Just think about all the people lying to you all the time. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're so smart, sir. And then when things go wrong, like it's got to be maddening. We should be grateful to our military, our troops, our officers for what they're doing for Russia, defending its interests, sovereignty, and above all, protecting our people. Protecting the Ukrainians aren't invading you. They act with dignity like Bucha, and achieve what the country needs. Like sanctions and the world against it. I don't know what he's saying exactly, but he can't say anything other than this, and that's part of the misery of what happens when you start lying like that. Okay, so here's another article. Putin explains why Russia does not conduct intense hostilities in Ukraine. Right, like they're holding back, they're showing restraint, is what he's saying. As for what happens now, and I have said this many times before, the intensification of hostilities leads to unjustified losses. Little by little becomes a lot, Putin stressed. Like, really? What really happened is that you can't actually achieve more. If you could, you would have already. So why continue lying? It's like you don't think that so you're lying, we know you're lying, and you think so little of us that you think that we don't know that you're lying? I mean, okay. Putin, about Western assistance to Ukraine, said this: Russia will crack the Patriot complexes one by one if they are delivered to Ukraine. These are outdated systems. They are worse than the S-300, and there is an antidote for them. Like, you crack the HIMARS? I mean, Patriots are a generation beyond really? Okay, anyway. All right, next article. Zelensky is a house guest who wouldn't leave, says Tucker Carlson. Now, I showed yesterday that Tucker Carlson was mentioned 300 times in RT, so this is more than 300 times in RT, and that's probably a bad place to be. So this is what Tucker said, and I don't watch him anymore. I can't stomach him. So the leader of the foreign government, dressed in a sweatshirt, waltzes into the United States Congress and starts demanding money. And let me stop there. Dressed in the sweatshirt. He's wearing olive drab uniform. He is the head of the military with his people. He's identified with it. How terrible would it have been? How off key, how discordant if he had walked in a suit and a tie while everything else is going on in Ukraine. Tucker's absolutely wrong about this. I'm a professor that teaches management. I'm a management professor. I specialize in leadership, power and influence, all those kinds of things. Zelensky is exactly where he should be doing what he should be doing. He's not trying to play military, but he is wearing uh, the proper attire for what his role is. Okay, at any rate, I've digressed too long. The United States Congress and demanding money, and then he has the gall to tell the people sitting there who are giving him tens of billions of dollars, more of your money, that's not charity, that it's an investment. It is an investment, and Tucker is short-sighted because he's not thinking about what could happen if this spins out of control. Look, nobody wants to pay for Putin being a jerk, but it's a cost of doing business in the world. This is the balance of power that has happened for as long as time has gone on in European politics, right? So this is nothing new, but you have to address it now, because if you don't address it now, it spins out of control. It gets far worse. Okay. Where do you get off talking to us like that? Carlson continued. Do we hate ourselves so much? Do we have so little respect for the US that we put up with it and applaud it? I didn't take it like that at all. I thought it was exactly the opposite. He hit all the right notes. He threaded the needle very carefully between showing I'm grateful for this. I do need more. You've helped us so much. We appreciate you. And he just did a great job with that. Now, this was really interesting because remember, this is an RT. Carlson is one of a handful of prominent American conservatives who have consistently opposed the U.S. bankrolling of Ukraine. But look at the word here that's important is handful. It's not like the entire right is against this. There's a split, there's a divide, just like there's a divide between progressives and liberals in the United States about how they should go about doing things. There's a divide between the populists and the conservatives within the Republican Party, which is mostly conservative. So yeah, but it's a handful. It's not the totality. He's the house guest who would not leave, and every moment we tolerate him, demands become bigger. Okay, well, Tucker, I can't stomach him anymore. So, okay, next. Iran responds to Zelensky's accusations. Tehran said that it was losing patience with unfounded claims by Ukraine's president of what? Of these drones that we see footage of daily coming down to Shahid 136 and now 131 drones. That's what we see all the time, and they're not coming from Iran when they're Iranian made. Okay, so who are you going to believe, us or your lying eyes? I mean, you've got to decide that, world. Okay, next article. The more the West supports the Kyiv regime, the more territories Ukraine may lose. Huh? Okay, so the ISW has said that Russia has not gotten away from its maximalist objectives. That means they want all of Ukraine. The West is ready to negotiate the normalization of relations with Russia. It's not ruled out that the West will eventually admit Russia's sovereignty over Crimea and Donbas republics. These concessions suggest that Volodymyr Zelensky's days as president are numbered. That is a wild Russian fantasy that is not anywhere tied to or tethered to reality. And he goes on and talks about why the West has no interest in Ukrainian territories, and these are all Russian propaganda points. Russia has shown its military power. The economic situation in Western countries has been deteriorating, and supporting and restoring Ukraine is unprofitable. And that's the same thing that they want to show. But what I really wanted to show you was this. Interestingly, the head of the Donetsk People's Republic, Denis Pushlin, said last week that Kyiv, Chernov, Poltava, Odessa, and a number of these other territories must be liberated as well. Liberated from whom? From those Nazis, right? Okay, so it appears to be a multi-move combination. The Kremlin believes that it's necessary to liberate Ukraine from all kinds of manifestations of neo-Nazi sentiments in general, and all depends on the choice of citizens and the decisions of people. The priority is to protect the people of the LPR and DPR. Well, what we know is that when people actually get to have a real vote about, like in a survey result, about what they think about Russia, only 2% are still pro-Russia. The rest of are not pro-Russian anymore. Now, that brings me to another really interesting thought. Who are the neo-Nazis, and how do you describe or define neo-Nazis? I put this out again and again, and I ask people, I challenge people, show me some documented evidence of Nazi affiliation and influence over the government. I don't mean that you see a symbol that looks somewhat Nazi-like the Iron Cross. Zelensky was wearing an Iron Cross. Well, it's also called a Victorian Cross in Great Britain, and Churchill had that. So that's not exactly a great sign of something, but that's about the best evidence that anybody's ever come up with. So I I I found this article fascinating because of what we just read. It used to be that words meant things. They had definitions which did not alter with the speaker. But that's what we keep doing here. It's so maddening to read Russian propaganda for this particular reason. Okay, last article. Moscow mocks Ukraine's new flag. I kind of dig it. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think this is a really nice, innovative touch to just show the support. I'm not saying that this should be the official flag or anything or whatever of either country. It's just I you know I can get behind this kind of sentiment. Now, what's interesting here is that Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova reacted by calling it the new flag of Ukraine. See, they're really co-opted by the Americans. Well, the Americans are supporting them, and they're happy about that. The thing about which we've been speaking for many, many years and nobody believed us has happened. My congratulations, she said. Well, yeah, but you induced it. Like this wasn't about to happen until you invaded and caused this thing to go down the way that it did. So that's where we are. Okay. Please spread the word about Ukraine, however you do it, whichever channels you go to, because this is really important. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.